Hello, Raven. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Racheal Dorsey, and I am the brand owner of Racheal Dorsey Autistic SLP. And then, as the name describes, I am an autistic speech language pathologist whose brand is a professional consultancy for other professionals that work with children and adults that are autistic, and then I also parent coach for parents that have autistic children.
You do? That sounds amazing. It seems that you actually understand this community a lot, from both the perspective and the personalist perspective. I'm actually very curious. So when did you learn about your diagnosis?
So it's been a several year-long journey. I graduated from graduate school for speech language pathology, and when I was in graduate school, they at least the program I was in, they don't teach you that much about autism, and so I wasn't really suspecting myself at that point because I just didn't know enough. I didn't have enough real world experience. And then I started working as a professional, and I worked with really young children, so early intervention and pre-K age, and I saw these young children and kind of immediately flashed back to my own very young childhood and saw a lot of the things that they did, like in myself back then, or even still currently. And in addition to having a special, to be honest, like a special connection with my autistic kids on my caseload.
Mm-hmm.
So then from there, I started to explore the idea, and then I set up an appointment with a kind of a random psychologist that was in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Did adult evaluations, and I was not diagnosed. I was diagnosed, incorrectly. I was diagnosed with the social pragmatic communication disorder, in addition to like anxiety and OCD tendencies, which that's a common story, right? Of like woman getting like one thing and then comma another thing, da da da, and like I didn't feel like that really fit completely. But then I started counseling, and that was incredibly important in my journey, because through counseling I was able to recall more things that I found shameful and that I tried to kind of forget. So like then at that point, like me and my counselor and then also my psychiatrist sort of all agreed that I was that I was autistic. Yeah. But like I needed that official verification, so I researched to find someone who is very knowledgeable in adults who are cognitively average or gifted, and then through that person was officially diagnosed.
From some of my previous guests, that seems like from the past previous guests I've had, a lot of them have said that they've either their child or they met someone that actually touched their lives, and then they went out for a diagnosis. And to hear your story, because I know for a fact many people in the community, they're like, how do I get diagnosed? Or how can I get diagnosed? Or what happened? They have to fight, right? Because sometimes they'll get misdiagnosed, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like the time period between getting my first diagnosis, my like kind of my incorrect diagnosis, and then like 8 months later being officially diagnosed, that was an extremely difficult time period where I was going back and forth in my brain. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And I started to think like, I must be like delusional. I must be just absolutely like out of my mind for thinking that I'm autistic. And I remember when I was officially diagnosed, when I was told like based off of my standardized scores and the like clinical opinion of just observation of me and what I have to say, that yes, I'm autistic.
Yeah.
There was this instant just like instant relief of like, okay, like I don't need to just think yes, no, yes, no, yes, no anymore. There's a clear answer, and now I can go forward and try to process what it means to be autistic.
Yes, I find, a lot of people, when they actually, because some people will go and get diagnosis, other people, like myself, we just like, I know what I am, and I'm just okay with that. Self-diagnosing, the self-diagnosis population, I know that a lot of people, once you have that clarity, it opens your doors, right?
Yes, for sure.
And I think that's why diagnosis to some people is very, very important, because now you don't feel so, I don't want to say lost, but you feel like you have so much more control of what's going on, because now you know what's the next steps to take for to help you, and I thought that was very interesting.
For sure.
So now you got your diagnosis, and you got which is very interesting that you got your diagnosis through counseling, because I was going to ask you, well, now you got your diagnosis, how did you cope with it? Like,
so like so right after I got my diagnosis, I then messaged my counselor online, and I'm like, I got diagnosed, and she was like, congratulations. So it was good, and this was just last February 2020, so it was fairly recent. But the whole previous like year, it's been in my head, so I've been processing that possibility. And then as far as coping with it, that is something that I think will, to be honest, I think we'll always, I think I'm always going to go through kind of waves of emotions.
Yeah.
Right? Because immediately afterwards, I was calm, felt relief. And then I was feeling very angry. Not at myself, not at my parents, because given, my parents and given like the research at the time, and I didn't even feel angry at like the school system or anything. I felt more angry at society. And I felt more angry at like, okay, well, I'm a speech therapist in the very present. And I'm seeing day to day so much misinformation and damaging things being said and done by therapists to autistic clients that they don't realize are damaging. But because I recall specific things from childhood that were like traumatic, I'm able to see that
you can make the connection almost.
I can make that connection, exactly. I can see how my autistic clients and just autistic people, autistic children, autistic people are very sensitive and interpret things in a amazing but unique way, and I think so often there's this narrative of like the autistic people aren't empathetic, which is so damaging. But I see it as like people aren't being empathetic towards neurodiverse or autistic people.
Yeah, I find most people, when they see autistic people, as somebody who works in behaviorism, I see a lot of people don't know what to look for, right? So their frame of reference and trying to see how someone's empathetic is compared to somebody who's neurotypical, instead of having the frame of reference of what it looks like to be neurodiverse and show empathy, what it looks like to, and that's one of the things that I wanted to bring on, because I know the biggest pushback with ABA is the fact that it's trying to change people from being neurodiverse to neurotypical and trying to kind of strip away the autism part. That's the conversations I've heard in the community. So it's hearing that you are actually a therapist who is autistic and ADHD and who is trying to kind of, you understand that it's important that these individuals have these skills, but you want them to still embrace themselves, right?
Like absolutely, for sure. And I think that I can't talk much to other fields. I'm a speech pathologist, so I know speech pathology and conversations surrounding speech pathology, and it has a long way to go regarding how it teaches skills to autistic children and what skills are even targeted. Like, I think it's much more important to foster self-advocacy skills and being able to, from a young age, teach what neurodiversity is. Children are amazing, and if you start at a young age and teach them what disabilities are, what neurodiversity is, and just talk about it and show them like the brain and have books and videos. I mean, learning about that stuff from a really young age can really shape how a person with a disability or a person who's neurodiverse views themselves in relation to other people. They don't view themselves. It can help with that person viewing themselves as, okay, I just have a difference. My brain is different, the same way that someone who stutters, their brain is a little different, or someone that is in the deaf community, their auditory system is different. That's that's just really empowering rather than I'm a broken human because I thought that's what I thought. I thought I'm a broken neurotypical.
It's always crazy, right? Because like I said, I've never been diagnosed with anything. I worked as an ABA, behavioral interventionist, ABA therapist for about a year, right? And the level of like, even the level, when I was at work, I would struggle big time, right? Focusing, obviously, ADHD. So I would sit there and do paperwork, and I would just sit there and think to myself, like, if I'm struggling, how is my client not struggling?
Yeah.
Or with my social anxiety, I remember, because I have social anxiety, and so I remember we would have these evaluations where they would have all of the people come in to the room, and the kid would freak out, but I'm freaking out with the kid. I'm not showing it, but I'm freaking out with the kid. There's too many people in this room. And when exposure therapy to me was, I didn't believe in it when I first heard about it.
Yeah.
And hearing some of these practices as somebody who knows the feelings that these other individuals are experiencing, you come to question the practice itself. But that you said that was really empowering is that you're understanding that we're not there yet, but we can get there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not so sure about ABA on all of that. I can't really speak on that, but I can say.
I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of ABA, but I know that there are ABA practitioners that are allies, and I know that there are some autistic BCBAs who really are making an effort to reform the field. So I think that's, a great step forward. I'm not sure as to the actual outcome of that.
So I feel like what's going to happen, and I think this is what I've said before, and I guess to me, I'm the type of person where I don't like, it is what it is kind of thing. But I feel like companies are going to use ABA and they're just going to remarket it. They're going to change the labeling and they're going to do all the same practices and they're just going to remarket it. And then, but they're going to make it look better to they're going to take all the criticism, use the same practices, and just hit the variables where the criticism is hit, and then keep it forward.
Right. Like ABA has become, let's be real, it's become like a business, and you bill for like so much time, and I can completely see the
business variation,
the marketing and the business administration aspect of it being like, we're all naturalistic, we're all informed by the autistic community, and then it not being
for them, but hiding behind it. I find that, and then, like I said it before, like the different ideologies within the community and different variations of the community make it like I today found out there's an anti-neurodiversity movement.
Yeah, I have heard about that. And I have some thoughts on that maybe we could discuss another time.
Yeah.
But it's a problem. And speech therapy, I've heard like speech therapists kind of say the same sort of thing. Like, well, if you don't teach these kids this and this, then how are they going to function in the real world? Like, and I've been asked, in my business from people that I've consulted with, like how to balance social acceptability and social standards with helping clients be like their true authentic selves. And I can see where they're coming from with that question. It's
Yeah.
a valid question. But I see it like, if someone is doing something that is just outright completely socially unacceptable to anyone, like insisting on like public nudity or something like that. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a sensory component to that could then be sort of solved or helped. But I think that but the majority of the time, a lot of these, social acceptable versus not socially acceptable things, like maybe there's a kid in class who raises his hand and blurts out the answer at the same time. Something like that, I think, can be handled through a helping the child and the class understand the differences between brains and between like neurodiversity and neurotypicality, and then maybe help the child, like maybe write down his ideas, because you don't want the child to feel like his ideas aren't important. So like they can write down all their ideas and share it at the end of the lesson or something like that.
I find sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm saying a lot of people are absolutely, so some people judge the development of people off the world they understand right now. A lot of people don't understand the world is changing faster than we've ever precedented, right? And so, like, if you have ADHD, the schooling system is not for you yet. I mean, I haven't had yet. Yeah. Because you have to be able to, it's like, for me, I would always zone out in class. Unless there was a story that I could, like, go along with. My mind was going 100 miles per hour, right? And again, I'm going to say yeah, because there are people who are going to innovate in the school system, so I'm going to say that, and I completely and utterly agree with you, because I know I used to put out questions all the time, like, oh my gosh, what have you? And having that teacher shut me down, or having teacher actually one time tell me shut up, made me feel like I do not like school, to this day. And so, and it's not their fault. I'm not even mad at them.
Sorry.
No, I'm not, like, at that time, I can understand that that teacher was psychologically not stable. So,
that teacher's mean.
No, he actually got fired for not being psychologically stable. So,
oh wow.
Yeah, and that's where you start to kind of, as somebody who's neurodiverse, you see it, and you're like, oh, like, you can see the triggers that we each carry for each other. And so when someone's saying that, I lost my train of thought. It's gone.
You're going like, oh, see, now I lost my train of thought. So
we were talking about you talked about the school systems and how we could teach children to respect, and we need to have a better system to empower the individual to interact within the system. But my thing is, like, we just need to change the system. Like,
yeah, no, I agree. Like, the system as it currently is not, it's
not made.
Well, it wasn't built for neurodiversity. And so you're trying, so it'd be trying to shift the system to fit neurodiversity, which I don't have that much hope for that. It needs to be dismantled completely. New. But I also don't have that much hope for that either. I think it's just really up to
the advocate, the individual.
Yeah, the advocate, exactly. Yeah, exactly. The advocate, the individual, the parent, the teachers, the therapists, and I mean, that's why I started my brand, because I think to I think to really help the autistic population, you need an autistic perspective, and you need an autistic perspective of someone who is trained and has experience in these systems that are flawed, and how to navigate that and how to advocate among all that, and then also how to understand things from the child's point of view. I find that I am very successful when I talk to a parent or a therapist about like an autistic child's behavior, when I frame that behavior in kind of logical human terms. Like they in their head might be thinking, this thing that this kid is doing is that's alien, that's weird, that's bizarre. And so when I reframe it as something that we all do in some respect, neurotypical or autistic or neurodiverse in some way, and not only do we all do it, but how awesome is it that that child knows how to, maybe they're spinning, knows how to self-regulate their sensory system in that way. Like they know how to do that when so many adults don't know how to regulate themselves.
No, let's take that a little bit deeper, right? Because when I was in the field, I had this client, and a lot of people had a lot of problems with him. I didn't have problems with him because I understood he had a lot of anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. He was autistic, and they didn't diagnose him with ADHD, but you could tell by his attention span. So I would be given like his objectives or whatever to work with him, but I would make sure that the program that he specifically used, with the help with my license, my case manager, we would try to cultivate it where he had as many breaks as he needed so we can reduce that anxiety, right?
Right, yeah.
Because he has a lot of anxiety. He jumps up and down, to the point where he was able to actually be very, very productive in the things that he wanted. He was reading. He got him to start reading. He actually wanted to read. He actually wanted to do activities.
Of course.
Because
right. Kids want to be successful, and they can be successful when they can be successful. No kid wants to mess up.
And I think, and that was one of the turning points, right? Because I had another case where there was this young girl, and I don't even know why I could figure it out, but she spoke English, but her mother spoke Spanish. I don't know. I cannot understand why this works. I haven't figured it out yet. But if you asked her to do something in English, she was a lot slower to processing it than if her mother asked her to do it in Spanish. So you would see more of I don't want to say the word compliance, but you would see more of an engaged response to it.
Was Spanish the primary language spoken around the home?
They said they used mostly English. Her mom's the one who speaks Spanish, but they said that the dad and the brothers and sisters are all speaking English because they wanted her to know English. So I do not understand why the Spanish variation.
Was TV in Spanish?
The TV might be in Spanish because the mom watched soap opera novellas. Yeah.
Yeah, it might have been that. But anyway, sorry. I'm trying to linguistically understand that.
Yeah, it was but nobody caught that, right? So you would see this girl, and they would say that she's slow, right? But it wasn't that she was slow. It was just that she was more adaptive to Spanish language than she was with English language. And so the understanding of neurodiversity at its core is to give people better context and a better frame of reference of what they're using the data. Because I find a lot of data in this field is not wrong.
Oh, for sure. And when you say this field, I think you're talking about ABA specifically, but I'm going to say that, even in speech therapy, I find similar things in the research regarding autism. It's the wrong things are being measured. They're being measured using incorrect metrics, and then the results are being interpreted in a really ableist way. Like, no matter what, it's like autism bad.
Yeah.
No matter what, like in these brain studies, like too much connectivity, too little connectivity, it's never just neutral. And I don't see autism. Some people are like, autism is a superpower, amazing thing. I don't see it as being
You froze.
a positive or a negative. I see it as being neutral, just as being neurotypical is neutral. These are all just neutral kind of human experiences of the world, and we need to understand each other.
I think I love that your point, because I've had somebody tell me that, because I always talk about the positives of being neurodiverse. And the reason I come from the context of, working with people in crisis and working with parents asking me like what's wrong with their child, and like having that conversation of, should I give my child away because I can't take care of him, and so when the context, and I always tell people like context is context is important, because I know a lot of people are like, well, because like there are some people, like the anti-neurodiversity movement is genuinely for people who have autism, ADHD, and some kind of other, like, it's not disorder, some other type of illness, right? So they'll have like seizures that can cause their kid to die, or like they can't move, or all these, like, they're like some real illnesses, and so that's the anti-neurodiversity. So the context is so important. And so the only reason why I myself will say the superpowers of being neurodiverse is to show people like it's not bad, is like there's good things. Focus on you're
just is. There are like strengths. I mean, the same way that everyone has strengths, and then there are, I would suppose, there are difficulties the same way everyone has difficulties. And so I think even though you're coming at it from a from a positivity standpoint, I think we're ultimately aligned in our views, because at the end of the day,
we're trying to get them to be seen as a person.
Exactly, we're all human.
Yeah, and that is like the pinnacle of all things, right? Because I've lately been kind of getting interested in I don't know if it's called disabled community or differently able community. I'm gonna say both.
Disability community.
Disability?
I believe so.
I got corrected. It was differently abled, but then someone said differently abled is super like.
No, not differently abled. No.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure no, because then with the differently abled, the connotation is that the word disability is a bad word, and it's not a bad word. We shouldn't be ashamed of, some people feel ashamed, but ideally we shouldn't have to feel ashamed about having a disability.
Yeah.
It just is, and we are human and valid, and like perfectly fine the way that we are, even with a disability.
Yeah. I'm part of this group because they were talking to me about that. Like, as you know, we're trying to figure out the language used here. And I just want to I don't know if I'll bring it up on this one. It's so interesting that I'm bringing it up, and you're like a speech pathologist, and I'm like, wow, because there's a lot of hurt and a lot of baggage, I would say, behind the words used. And I want to say that now for anybody who's listening, trying to figure out what to say, because I know a lot of people are like, well, why don't you just say this? And I'm like, well, there's baggage. There's a lot of interpretation, the words used.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, some of those, like, that community is such a beautiful community, right? I was
Yeah.
reading, I follow this girl named the Wheelchair Rapunzel, and like, I love her
Mm.
posts. I follow the advocate. She's a high advocate about, and I think
Mm-hmm.
about, sorry, this is lost. This is where my ADD comes in. Oh man, I love it. I And another thing is, I do point out that my ADD moments, because I want people to know, like, if you have them, that's okay. Because I know for
Right.
me that I used to feel so, like, in the beginning of this year, I felt super ashamed because I would like square
Yeah.
off, and I'm like, no. So I just wanted to clarify that as well.
No, but I
And
love that you do. I love that you do that though, because like there are like BCBAs, OTs, SLPs, teachers, counselors, psychologists, you name it, who are in schools. Like, you know, a kid is having, it has ADHD, and then kind of, you know, their brain is like connecting all these patterns and thinking about all these things, and then they kind of going off with an idea, and then they're told like, no, kind of focus. What were you? And like, you feel shame
yeah,
because of that. So I really like that you point out that oh, I just, you know, made a connection in my head. It's because of my ADD. And then you kind of just roll with it. I really like that.
and you know, it's crazy you say that, because before I got educated, and when I was working with clients as a behavioral interventionist, there was this one client. He had autism, but he's never diagnosed. But he was super creative, and when I got his diagnosis and I started to really work with him, I'm like, they got it wrong, like, and they did get it wrong, because he was really smart. Like, he was like 5, and his reading level was, he would eat books. Like, I not eat them literally, but he would go through them. Like, he was like 5, and he would go through like 8 books in like 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's
Like,
incredible.
you know, but he was insanely, when I feel like most creative people, they could put things together, and he would do that all the time. And I used to want to get him to focus on the project. Now looking back at it, it's probably been better to teach him how to cultivate it.
Right.
And there need more programs on how to do that. Because even with myself, like, because for me, I went to like, coaching for that, right? So I was talking to somebody about that, about like talking to people, but the fact that I'm everywhere, you know. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted this, because everyone's like, well, why are you so open about it? I'm like, because I want people to know. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Well, I think like, I mean, programs like I'm sure your ABA schooling that you did
Mm-hmm.
is similar in that it my SLP schooling and a lot of schooling, it doesn't teach you things like how you should you know, advocate, be an advocate for your children and help them, like self-advocate, and help them feel a sense of fulfillment, and how you should cultivate their skills. It especially with autism, it's through such a deficit impairment lens
Yeah,
that, I mean, like, I had to teach myself. I mean, yes and no. Like, I saw there was a problem, and then I sought out resources to help educate me.
yeah.
And it sounds like you did the same thing. You saw that there was problems, and then you tried
And
to learn.
I think, well, this is how I built this. Like, I was like, there was so much in the neurodiverse community. Like, I want them to have it's, I've said this before, you know, as a caregiver, because I take care of people who are, you know, neurodiverse, or I'm gonna say neurodiverse, like the older or whatever. And I always say, like, they would have a better life. All they need is a modified lifestyle, and they'll be great.
Mm-hmm.
I told them, like, I see them the same as I see as somebody who's neurotypical. And I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of people thought I was crazy. They were laughing at me, and they're like, "You're
Mm-hmm.
crazy, like this and that." And I'm like, if you could give these individuals the right way to communicate in a way that makes them feel empowered, give them the right tools and resources, and, you know, help them, their life will be different.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, their life will be
Absolutely.
different. And so, like, for me, like, that's why I love my day job, because I get to do that and help these individuals. But also for individuals who don't have that, like, who are on their own per se, are not under government care, I thought I could build this brand and help this brand be their, like, guiding light. Because to me, I would want, if you're somebody, like, for me, like, I went out to look for my own resources, and I would never thought that I was ADHD, or it's like someone told me, they're like, I think you're ADHD. And I was like, I don't think I am, you know? And so all these years I struggled. I just thought I was a horrible student. I could never sit still. Like, it was everywhere. And so, as most go, so I got on my phone to ask you another question, because we were railroading. Oh, bad. Love it. But so I'm curious. Oh, you already talked about your business. And you talk about why you started your business. We went through all the we went through all the questions very
just naturally, like, there, you know, no script or anything. I just, you know, tie it into the conversation. That's how smooth I am.
That was super smooth. Oh my goodness. But yeah, do you have social media up yet?
I do, yes. I have a Facebook account, or a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/DorserySLP. I have, it's DORSEYSLP. And then I have an Instagram page, which is Instagram.com/RDorseySLP, because I guess Dorsey SLP was taken. So that one's RDorseySLP because my name is Racheal Dorsey, RD. And my website is just www.dorseyslp. So I have on there blog posts that I've made. I have one video. I'm going to upload more. I have various plans for like service plans for like professional consultancies or consultations, and parent coaching. And what else do I have? I think, oh yeah,